They placed me at table 14 behind a floral display large enough to conceal a small vehicle, as if I were some distant aunt, best kept obscured by foliage. I offered a gentle smile, knowing full well this polished young man had no clue what tempest he'd just invited into his life. In 72 hours, he'd appear at my doorstep, clutching documents that would amuse me for months. If you're listening to this, leave a comment below. I'd love to know which part of the world you're tuning in from. What Alexander Sterling didn't realize was that this seemingly fragile widow had been guarding some exceptionally valuable truths. The day had dawned with such hope. I'd selected my attire with the focus of a grand master, a soft blue dress that murmured, "unassuming widow," complemented by my mother's silver bracelet for a touch of understated grace. My hair was styled at Rita's salon, nothing extravagant, just presentable for my daughter's wedding. "You look appropriate, Mom," Chloe said when I arrived, her attention already captured by some dilemma the wedding planner was navigating. Appropriate, like a consolation prize in human form. I watched my daughter move through the room in our great-grandmother's silk gown, the sole treasure our lineage had preserved across generations. She looked incandescent, beaming with that bridal glow that makes everyone briefly forget their own worries. But as guests arrived, the social order became unmistakable. Alexander's family entered like foreign dignitaries. His mother, Beatrice, adorned with sufficient emeralds to distract air traffic. She navigated the crowd with clinical accuracy, cheek-kissing the influential while somehow gazing straight through me as though I were decor. "Pardon me," I told the harried usher, presenting my table card. "I do believe there's been a wonderful error." "Table 14, ma'am, just beside the decorative installation." Decorative installation? How tactfully they phrased it. I was being sequestered behind sufficient blossoms to provision a flower shop. I made my way to my appointed seclusion, which provided an exceptional vista of precisely nothing except lilies and fern. From my botanical confinement, I observed the celebrations unfold via the large mirror opposite. There I sat, Eleanor Vance, 71 years of accumulated insight, stored away like yesterday's news. The ceremony was lovely, I'll concede. Chloe seemed to drift down the aisle like a vision from a storybook, and Alexander appeared quite dashing in his tailored suit. Yet during the reception, I noticed something compelling about my new son-in-law. He possessed an assortment of smiles. 1,000-watt charisma for the clearly affluent, rehearsed courtesy for the beneficial, and utter disregard for anyone who appeared likely to request assistance rather than provide it.
"Mrs. Vance!" I turned to find Alexander himself approaching, equipped with his most brilliant smile, the variety reserved for individuals he intended to influence. "Isn't this absolutely enchanting?" he remarked, gesturing toward the festivities as if he'd personally orchestrated the moonlight. "You must be overflowing with pride." "I'm practically shimmering with maternal delight," I responded, my tone more saccharine than synthetic sweetener. "Though I must mention, the perspective from here is rather instructive." He either overlooked the sarcasm or elected to disregard it like an experienced statesman. "I was hoping we could share some meaningful time soon, truly become acquainted." How novel. Most individuals typically accomplish that before uniting with the family, but I truly appreciate your dedication to addressing matters in reverse sequence. That earned me an almost imperceptible hesitation in his smile, merely a tremor, but I detected it like an eagle sighting movement. I was considering dinner this week, simply us two. I have some intriguing concepts about family partnership. Family partnership? How wonderfully foreboding. Well, I do adore a good mystery meal. Is Thursday suitable for your packed agenda? Ideal. I'm familiar with an establishment in the city center. Quite discreet, excellent for significant discussions. Significant discussions about what? I pondered. My fascinating coin collection? My weekly book club controversies? I can barely restrain my anticipation, I declared, fanning myself with my napkin like a southern belle experiencing dizziness.
As he drifted away to charm more promising targets, I glimpsed my reflection again in that mirror. A platinum-haired woman in restrained clothing, seated alone behind enough flowers to populate a conservatory. Someone who appeared as though she likely used discount vouchers and concerned herself with utility expenses. Exactly the impression I'd been nurturing for 24 months. During the parent-daughter dance, I slipped away to refresh myself in the marble ladies' lounge. In that elegant refuge, I reapplied my lipstick and rehearsed my harmless senior widow expression. When I returned to my floral fortress, Alexander was charming the older pair beside me, the Wellingtons from David's former company. They were absorbing his focus like it was wedding dessert. "Mrs. Vance," he said, meeting my gaze as I sat, eagerly anticipating Thursday. "As am I, dear, as am I." As Chloe launched her bouquet and the night concluded, I observed my new son-in-law navigate the room with the proficiency of an experienced illusionist. He clearly had intricate schemes developing in that attractive mind. Unfortunately for Alexander, I dedicated 71 years to learning that the most hazardous adversaries are typically those everyone undervalues. And this elderly widow was preparing to become exceptionally hazardous. The post-wedding fallout persisted precisely 48 hours before the genuine performance started. Chloe phoned daily, each discussion a vibrant composition of conjugal joy and how marvelously Alexander was treating her. "He's so considerate, Mom, constantly planning for our future and monetary stability." Stability. The term drifted through our dialogues like mist before rainfall. "How delightful, sweetheart! A spouse should unquestionably contemplate finances perpetually, particularly other individuals' finances." "Whatever do you mean?" "Nothing, dear. Simply that fiscal strategizing is so romantic." Chloe completely missed the irony, which was likely optimal. Wednesday progressed with the speed of a medical appointment you couldn't postpone. I passed the day engaged in thrilling widow pursuits, polishing David's volumes, trimming hydrangeas, and speculating about what my captivating new son-in-law wished to discuss over what would undoubtedly be overvalued wine. Thursday night arrived with all the eagerness of an insurance review. I dressed for my part as unassuming widow. Straightforward navy dress that implied respectability without wealth, combined with my grandmother's silver earrings and David's malfunctioning timepiece that still appeared dignified from afar. The restaurant Alexander had selected was among those establishments where they articulate water with a European inflection, and the servers regard you as though you're individually accountable for their creative dissatisfaction. He was already positioned when I entered, appearing every bit the prosperous junior executive. "Eleanor," he practically ascended from his seat, "you look absolutely glowing." "Thank you, dear. This venue is certainly distinctive." And it was distinctive indeed. The kind of distinctive that made you question if they imposed additional charges for the advantage of feeling insufficient. We requested wine. He insisted on a bottle that likely contained more syllables than my college degree, and relaxed into what he clearly believed would be a simple conversation. "So," he started, swirling his wine like a sommelier with grandeur aspirations, "how are you handling independent living?" "Oh, just marvelously. 71 years of practice renders most matters seemingly trivial." Naturally. But surely it becomes overwhelming occasionally. That spacious home, all those determinations. He was angling with the subtlety of explosives in a fishing pond. David always claimed I possessed sufficient viewpoints for 4 individuals, so I remained thoroughly engaged. He chuckled, that rehearsed corporate laugh that probably achieved miracles with financiers and impressionable senior relatives. "That's excellent. But genuinely, don't you concern yourself with pragmatic affairs, financial matters, lawful problems, individuals who might exploit your generous disposition?" There it was, the actual subject, costumed as worry and delivered with costly wine. "Should I be anxious about something particular, Alexander?" "Not anxious, precisely, but prepared. You understand how complex matters can grow, particularly for someone in your distinctive circumstance." "My distinctive circumstance? As if widowhood were an uncommon ailment. And what situation would that be, exactly?" He inclined forward, his voice lowering to that confidential pitch gentlemen employ when they're preparing to explain something to the lesser gender. "Well, residing alone, making crucial decisions without direction, being susceptible to individuals who may not prioritize your welfare." "Susceptible to individuals like him, presumably. How caring of you to care about my susceptibility. I've actually been conferring with my solicitor regarding protective steps for persons in situations resembling yours." "Protective steps? How wonderfully condescending. What variety of protection are we examining?" He reached into his jacket with the flair of a magician extracting a rabbit from headwear, emerged a tan folder, which he positioned on the table as if it were a sacred artifact. "Merely some fundamental documentation. Nothing theatrical, simply precautions in case you ever require aid making significant determinations." I opened a folder with the enthusiasm of someone managing the venomous creature. Power of attorney, financial supervision authority, medical choice jurisdiction, complete control masked as affectionate concern. "This is rather extensive. My attorney specializes in senior care. He's managed numerous cases like yours." "Cases like mine? I was apparently a clinical subject now? How intriguing. And Chloe is informed of this considerate enterprise?" "She believes it's ingenious. Truly, Eleanor, we simply wish to guarantee you're shielded from anyone who might exploit your confiding nature." My confiding nature? The boy had truly completed his research. Protected from whom, specifically? "Oh, you know, deceitful tradesmen, dubious financial advisors, relatives who might abruptly develop profound interest in your well-being." Relatives who might abruptly develop interest. The irony was so dense you could present it as the final course. How prescient of you to predict such difficulties. It's simply logical reasoning. These arrangements are significantly simpler to organize before any complexities emerge. Complexities like me retaining authority over my own existence. I understand, and this requires swift handling because timing is crucial with these agreements. The longer you delay, the more inquiries might surface regarding your capability to make such judgments. My capability. He was already establishing foundation for declaring me incapable. Well, I stated, shutting the folder and resting my hands atop it, as if sanctifying it. This unquestionably demands careful contemplation. Relief washed over his expression like he'd just secured a major account. Of course, take all the time necessary, though my lawyer did highlight that immediate action would be recommended. Immediate action, before I had opportunity to think or consult anyone with operational neurons. I'll certainly wish to examine this with my own legal advisor. His smile wavered like a flame in breeze. Your own lawyer? Oh, indeed. I realize it appears foolish, but I'd feel more at ease having someone clarify it in terminology my elementary comprehension can process. Eleanor, I truly believe we should conclude this tonight. These affairs function optimally when managed proficiently. Proficiently, before I had opportunity to recognize I was being burglarized. I'm certain your notary will comprehend that crucial decisions shouldn't be hastened. My what? Your notary? You did bring one, correct? You appear so organized for all else. The facade dissolved entirely. How did you learn about the notary? Fortunate presumption. You strike me as someone who prepares in advance. Alexander observed me for an extended moment, likely attempting to ascertain if I were genuinely naive or actively opposing his deception. Naturally, he ultimately said, "Take all the time you require," but his eyes communicated something completely different. His eyes stated he was finished amusing himself with the harmless elderly widow. Unfortunately for Alexander, the harmless elderly widow was merely commencing her amusement with him.
The weekend passed with deceptive tranquility, but I could sense Alexander's agitation crackling through the telephone lines like electrical discharge. Chloe phoned twice, both instances casually inquiring about that useful paperwork Alexander presented to you. Still contemplating it, sweetheart. He's simply attempting to assist, Mom. He understands so much about legal affairs. Legal affairs, like larceny, was merely another entry on a career advancement checklist. Monday morning delivered a call that verified my suspicions about my charming son-in-law's authentic character. Eleanor, it's Alexander. I trust you've had opportunity to ponder our conversation. Oh, I've been contemplating almost nothing else. Splendid. I was hoping we could meet again this week. I have some supplementary data that might help clarify matters. Supplementary data? More advanced fabrications, presumably. How thoughtful. Same restaurant. Actually, I was considering somewhere more confidential. Perhaps your residence. I could bring some documents that would be simpler to review in a cozy environment. My residence, where he could coerce me without observers? What variety of documents? Simply some illustrations of how these arrangements have assisted other households. Success narratives, you could say. Success narratives about senior individuals who'd relinquished their autonomy to charming marauders. That sounds captivating. Wednesday evening. Perfect. Approximately 7. Wednesday couldn't arrive rapidly enough. I spent the intervening days engaged in my specialty, observing and strategizing. If Alexander wished to play games in my home, I'd ensure the game was fixed to my advantage. Wednesday evening, I prepared for combat. Simple charcoal dress, minimal accessories, the ideal outfit for a woman preparing to activate a very costly trap.
Alexander appeared exactly at 7, equipped with his briefcase and his most reliable smile. "Eleanor, thank you so much for consenting to meet here. I realize this entire situation can feel overwhelming." "Oh, I'm not overwhelmed whatsoever. I'm actually discovering it quite enlightening." He settled into my parlor as if he belonged there, distributing documents across my coffee table with practiced efficacy. "I brought some case studies of families who've gained from these arrangements. I believe you'll find them comforting." How considerate. But before we discuss other individuals' stories, I have some inquiries about your story. Your story? Yes, I'm curious about your background, your credentials for administering other people's lives. His assured demeanor flickered marginally. "Well, I possess extensive commercial experience." "In what sector?" "Wealth management, primarily." "For which company?" "I work independently currently." "And previously?" "Various roles in financial services." "Various roles. How delightfully ambiguous. How long have you been counseling elderly individuals about their fiscal decisions?" "I wouldn't characterize it as counseling precisely, more like protective preparation." "And how many elderly individuals have you protected?" "A handful. Families who required guidance." "Guidance they solicited, or guidance you proposed they needed?" The room grew quiet except for the ticking of my grandfather's clock. "Eleanor, I believe there might be some misinterpretation regarding my intentions." "Oh, I comprehend your intentions perfectly. What I'm curious about are your methods. Your methods for identifying susceptible targets, for winning their confidence, for persuading them to sign away their rights." His mask was fracturing like aged varnish. "You're making grave allegations." "I'm making grave observations about a grave predator who committed a grave error." "What error?" I smiled, channeling every measure of steel David had ever witnessed in me, presuming I was merely another helpless widow. "Eleanor, I believe you're bewildered." "I'm not bewildered whatsoever. I know precisely what you're attempting to accomplish. The question is whether you know what I'm preparing to do." "What are you discussing?" "I'm discussing the reality that I've been recording this discussion. I'm discussing the private investigator who's been chronicling your activities. I'm discussing the attorney who's preparing criminal accusations." The hue drained from his face like someone had pulled a drain. "You can't prove anything." "I can prove everything. Your monetary difficulties, your debts, your pattern of targeting elderly women, all of it." "That's impossible." "Is it? Inform me, Alexander. How much do you owe in wagering debts?" He became completely motionless. "How do you know about that?" "I know everything about you, including the reality that you're not my first admirer." "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're not the first charming young man who's tried to detach me from my resources. The distinction, this occasion, I was prepared." "Prepared how?" I stood, my voice descending to a whisper that could cut crystal. "Prepared to annihilate anyone who attempts to steal what my husband dedicated 40 years to constructing." "You don't understand. I'm desperate. I require." "You need to depart now, before I contact the authorities." "Eleanor, please. We can negotiate something." "The only thing we're negotiating is whether you leave willingly or in restraints." Alexander collected his papers with trembling hands. His meticulous
meticulously constructed scheme disintegrating around him like a card structure in a cyclone. This isn't concluded. Yes, I said, considering David's secrets awaiting in the cellar. It is.
After he departed, I poured myself a glass of David's finest wine and sat in my silent kitchen. Tomorrow, I'd descend to the basement and unlock that ancient safe. Tomorrow, I'd learn exactly what armaments my husband had bequeathed me. Tonight, I'd relish the expression of terror in Alexander Sterling's eyes when he recognized he'd selected the incorrect widow to confront. Some predators discover too belatedly that occasionally the prey possesses larger teeth than the hunter. Thursday morning, I stood at the summit of my cellar stairs, clutching David's key, my heart pulsating with anticipation and dread. For 24 months, I'd avoided this moment, too grief-stricken to confront whatever mysteries my spouse had left behind. Alexander Sterling had just provided me with an excellent motivation to conquer my reluctance. The basement smelled of antique paper and David's aftershave, the aroma still clinging to his garments suspended in the corner. His workstation sat exactly as he'd left it. Word puzzles, coffee-stained coasters, the reading spectacles he'd worn for 4 decades. The safe was concealed behind a panel I'd never detected, camouflaged to resemble portion of the concrete wall. David had always been more ingenious than he revealed. Inside, I discovered documents that made my hands tremble. Bank statements displaying accounts I'd never known existed. Investment records spanning decades. Legal papers establishing trusts and safeguards I hadn't known were created. And at the absolute base, a letter in David's recognizable handwriting that transformed everything. My dearest Eleanor, if you're reading this, it signifies I've departed, and someone is trying to exploit your generous spirit. I regret I never informed you about the finances. $35 million, appropriately secured and entirely yours. I lived humbly so we could depart affluent, and I concealed our wealth so you'd be secure from predators, exactly like whoever compelled you to unlock the safe. $35 million. I sat down heavily on David's ancient chair, the numerals swimming before my vision. $35 million. More money than I could expend in 10 lifetimes. The letter proceeded. There's a professional card in this envelope for Linda Chen. She's managed everything since I became ill. She's aware of the threats you might encounter, and she has directives to help you retaliate. Don't permit anyone to steal what I dedicated 40 years to building for you. Utilize every cent if necessary. Make them regret the day they decided to confront my wife. I located Linda's card and phoned instantly. Chen Legal Office. This is Eleanor Vance. I believe my husband David arranged for you to aid me. Mrs. Vance, I've been anticipating 24 months for your call. Can you visit today? How shortly? What about immediately? Linda Chen's office was nothing like the conventional legal chambers I'd anticipated. Contemporary, luminous, with family photographs dispersed among law credentials. She was younger than I'd imagined, possibly 45, with penetrating eyes and a handshake that could fracture walnuts. Eleanor, please sit. David informed me this day might arrive. What day? The day someone tried to manipulate you into signing away your rights. She distributed documents across her desk. Trust papers, investment records, legal protections I'd never envisioned. Your spouse was remarkably prescient. He predicted someone would approach you within 2 years of his passing, probably through family links, attempting to seize control of what they assumed were moderate assets. But they're not moderate. No, they're not. $35 million entirely secured in an irrevocable trust. You control everything,
but no one else can access it. Even if they somehow obtained power of attorney? Even if I signed Alexander's papers? Even then, David specifically engineered this to protect you from precisely that variety of manipulation. I reclined, feeling like I was perceiving my existence clearly for the initial time in 2 years. So Alexander can't access any of it. Alexander can't access a penny. But more significantly, you now possess the means to ensure he never attempts this again. What do you mean? Linda smiled with something that appeared almost predatory. I mean, we're going to dismantle him so thoroughly that he'll dedicate the remainder of his existence cautioning other predators about the perils of underestimating widows. How? Criminal accusations for attempted deception, civil lawsuits for damages, and we're going to examine each financial transaction he's conducted for the past 5 years. Is that lawful? Perfectly lawful. When someone attempts to defraud you, we're entitled to discover where his money originated, where it proceeded, and who else he owes. We'll expose his entire operation. Operation? Oh, indeed. Men like Alexander don't operate independently. There's an entire network of individuals who target elderly victims. We're going to find them all. I considered Chloe, her tears when she discussed Alexander's debts, how meticulously he'd manipulated both of us. What occurs to my daughter's marriage? That's Chloe's decision, but she'll make that determination with complete information rather than falsehoods and manipulation. And the money remains confidential until you decide otherwise. The brilliance of David's scheme is that you can reside exactly as you have been, or you can purchase a yacht tomorrow. Your selection. I gathered the trust documents, feeling like I was clutching lightning in my hands. When do we commence counterattacking? We already initiated. The instant you entered my office, Alexander Sterling became a target instead of a hunter. As I drove home, I couldn't cease thinking about David's letter. He knew this would occur. He'd prepared for it. He'd armed me for a conflict I didn't even realize was approaching. But more than that, he'd given me permission to triumph. That evening, Chloe called. "Mom, Alexander appears genuinely disturbed about something. He refuses to inform me what occurred at your meeting." We had a captivating conversation about his plans for my future. What variety of plans? The variety that presume I'm too foolish to protect myself. "Mom, he's simply attempting to help." "Sweetheart, there are facts about your husband you're unaware of. Facts about our family, finances you're unaware of. Tomorrow, I believe it's time you learned the truth." "What truth?" "The truth about what your father actually bequeathed me, and the truth about what I'm going to do to anyone who attempts to steal it." The silence on the other end was deafening. "Mom, you're frightening me." "Excellent. It's about time someone in this family was adequately frightened." After Chloe disconnected, I sat in my kitchen clutching David's letter, contemplating $35 million and the war it was about to purchase me. Alexander Sterling believed he was pursuing a helpless widow. He was about to uncover he'd entered the den of a very wealthy, very irate dragon. And dragons don't negotiate with thieves. They incinerate them.
Friday morning arrived with Linda Chen's call and the sweet pledge of professional vengeance. "I located an attorney who specializes in prosecuting senior fraud. She desires to meet with you today." "How shortly?" "This afternoon. She's quite interested in Alexander's case." "Why?" "Because she believes he's part of a larger operation. If we can verify that, we can dismantle the entire network." The afternoon meeting occurred in the district attorney's office, where I met Amanda Reed, a sharp-eyed prosecutor who appeared as though she consumed insurance deception for breakfast. Mrs. Vance, describe your son-in-law's approach. I guided her through each conversation, each manipulation, each meticulously crafted falsehood Alexander had fed me and Chloe. Classic pattern, she stated, taking notes. Family connection, financial pressure, urgency to sign documents. He's done this previously. How can you determine? Because novices commit errors. Alexander knew exactly which emotional triggers to press, which legal terminology to employ, how to structure the timeline. This is his profession. So what do we accomplish? We establish a trap. Make him believe he's triumphed, then document everything he does next. Linda inclined forward. What variety of trap? Mrs. Vance contacts him, states she's reconsidered, wishes to proceed with signing the papers. We record everything. His reaction, his instructions, his timeline. And then we apprehend him the moment he brings a notary to witness the signing. I smiled, considering Alexander's desperation, his wagering debts, his absolute certainty he'd manipulated a helpless widow. When do we activate this trap? Monday. That allows us the weekend to install recording apparatus and coordinate with the police. Saturday. I spent the day preparing for the performance of my existence, practicing my grateful widow voice, rehearsing my lines about feeling more secure with Alexander's protection. Sunday brought Chloe, appearing anxious and perplexed. Mom, Alexander has been behaving peculiarly. He continues inquiring about Dad's finances, about whether you might possess concealed accounts or investments. What did you inform him? That I'm unaware of anything regarding your money. But Mom, why is he so interested? I observed my daughter, beautiful, trusting, completely oblivious that her husband was a predator hunting her mother. Because he requires money more desperately than you realize. How desperately? Desperately enough to steal it from his wife's mother. Chloe stared at me. You genuinely believe he's trying to steal from you? I know he is. The question is whether you're prepared to witness verification. What variety of verification? The variety that will ruin your marriage but rescue your mother. Chloe remained quiet for an extended period. Finally, she whispered, reveal it to me. Monday morning, I phoned Alexander with the performance of my lifetime. Alexander, it's Eleanor. I've been contemplating our conversation. Oh, his voice was cautiously controlled, but I could detect the excitement beneath. I believe you're correct. I do require protection. I'd like to proceed with those papers. The relief in his voice was audible. That's wonderful, Eleanor. When would be suitable? As promptly as feasible. This weekend made me recognize how susceptible I genuinely am. Ideal. I can have everything prepared by this afternoon. This afternoon? I permitted a note of senior confusion to enter my voice. Isn't that rather rapid? These matters function optimally when managed proficiently. I'll bring my notary. We'll obtain everything signed and you'll be entirely protected. Protected from him. Well, if you believe it's optimal, I do. Let's state 3 o'clock at your residence. 3 o'clock sounds ideal. After I disconnected, Linda nodded approvingly from her position monitoring the recording equipment. He completely accepted the bait. Now what? Now we await for him to hang himself with his own rope. At precisely 3 o'clock, Alexander appeared with his briefcase, his notary, and his most reliable smile. Concealed cameras captured everything as he distributed documents across my coffee table. Eleanor, I can't express how relieved I am that you're taking this step. I recognized you were correct about the dangers. An elderly woman like me requires guidance.
Precisely. Now, these documents will grant Chloe and me the authority to protect your interests. All of my interests? All of them. Financial judgments, medical selections, living arrangements, everything. Living arrangements. He was already scheming to institutionalize me somewhere convenient. And this requires notarization today because delays generate complications. The sooner we implement this, the sooner you're protected. I lifted the pen, allowing my hand to tremble marginally. This is quite overwhelming. I realize it appears complex, but trust me, this is optimal for everyone. Trust him, the man who was stealing my existence while pledging to protect it. I signed the initial page, then paused. Alexander, may I inquire something? Naturally. What occurs to my finances after I sign this? Your money will be professionally administered. No more concern about investments or invoices or financial judgments. By whom? By individuals with expertise, people who comprehend these matters. People like you. People like Chloe and me. Yes. I signed the second page. And if I alter my decision later, well, that would depend on your mental condition at the time. These arrangements are designed to be permanent. Permanent like a life term. I understand. I signed the third page. Alexander, there's something I should mention. What's that? I believe there might be more money than you realize. His eyes illuminated like holiday morning. More money? David may have possessed some accounts I wasn't aware of. Concealed investments, perhaps. How much additional money, Eleanor? And there it was. The greed, the desperation, the absolute confirmation that this was never about protecting me. I'm uncertain. Perhaps substantial amounts. Alexander's hands were genuinely trembling now. Substantial how? Well, I stated, setting down the pen without signing the final page. That's where matters become intriguing. What do you mean? I smiled, considering $35 million and the trap we'd just activated. I mean, you're under arrest, Alexander. You possess the right to remain silent. The police emerged from their hiding positions as Alexander's face turned pale with shock and horror. You can't. I can. I did. And now you're going to discover what happens to predators who hunt the incorrect prey. As they escorted him away in restraints, I heard him screaming about entrapment and legal contests. But all I heard was the sound of justice being delivered with a $35 million portion of vengeance. The news shattered that evening. Local entrepreneur arrested in elder fraud sting operation. Alexander's arrest procession aired on every channel, his face a mask of disbelief and fury. Chloe phoned, weeping. "Mom, what have you accomplished?" "I've protected myself from your husband's attempt to steal my autonomy and my assets." "But the arrest, the accusations, this will ruin him." "Excellent. That was the objective." "How can you be so cold? How can you defend a man who is systematically planning to rob your mother?" Chloe appeared an hour later, her eyes crimson from crying. I seated her and played the recording of Alexander's confession. Each avaricious word, each computed manipulation, each instant he'd revealed his authentic nature. "He intended to place me in a care facility, sweetheart. He intended to steal everything your father bequeathed me and convince everyone I was too senile to protest. But he loves me. He loves what he believed you could obtain for him. There's a distinction." I showed her the financial records Linda had uncovered, the wagering debts, the counterfeit business enterprises, the systematic targeting of elderly widows. "This isn't his initial occasion, Chloe.
You're married to a professional predator." She stared at the evidence, her face cycling through denial, anger, and heartbreak. "What am I expected to accomplish now?" "Whatever you desire. But you'll accomplish it with complete information, not with falsehoods and manipulation."
Tuesday brought Alexander's father, pompous and enraged. "Eleanor, you've ruined my son's existence over a misinterpretation. I've exposed your son's criminal conduct. There's a distinction. He was attempting to aid you. He was attempting to rob you. The recordings don't deceive. This is vindictive, cruel. This is justice. Your son elected to prey on elderly women. Now he experiences the consequences." Wednesday brought Alexander's bail hearing, where he attempted to portray himself as a concerned family member who'd been entrapped by a paranoid widow. The judge wasn't impressed. "Mr. Sterling, the evidence indicates a systematic attempt to defraud an elderly family member. Bail established at $750,000. $750,000, money Alexander didn't possess. He'd remain in jail until trial. Thursday brought a visit from Linda with updates that made my morning coffee taste even superior. The FBI is interested in Alexander's case. They believe he's connected to a multi-state elder fraud network. How extensive? Potentially scores of victims, millions in stolen assets. If they can flip Alexander, they might dismantle the entire operation. Will he cooperate? Depends how much prison time he's confronting. 15 years tends to make individuals quite conversational. 15 years. Alexander would be middle-aged when released, assuming he survived that long in prison. Friday brought Chloe's decision. She filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and emotional fraud. "I can't remain married to someone who tried to rob my mother," she informed the lawyer. "What about the residence, the vehicles, the lifestyle he supplied?" "All purchased with borrowed money and false pledges. I desire nothing that originated from his schemes." Chloe relocated back to town, locating an apartment near mine. The experience had transformed her, strengthened her, made her more suspicious, more conscious of how individuals could be manipulated. "I feel so foolish," she stated one evening as we sat on my terrace. "You trusted someone you loved. That's not foolish. It's human." But all the indicators were present: the costly lifestyle, the ambiguous responses about money, the abrupt interest in you after we became engaged. He was exceptionally skilled at his profession. Professional manipulators are trained to exploit trust. "How did you know?" "I didn't, initially, but your father bequeathed me resources, instruments to counterattack when someone tried to steal what he'd constructed." "What variety of resources?" "I observed my daughter, wondering if she was prepared for the truth about David's legacy. The variety that transform helpless widows into exceptionally hazardous adversaries." "Mom, exactly how much money did Dad bequeath you?" "Sufficient to annihilate anyone who attempts to steal it."
The trial commenced in September. Alexander's lawyer attempted every defense: diminished capacity, entrapment, family misinterpretation. Nothing functioned. The evidence was overpowering. The recordings were damning. The pattern of targeting elderly victims was undeniable. When they played the audio of Alexander discussing my mental state and his plans for permanent control of my assets, even his own lawyer appeared disgusted. The jury deliberated for 39 minutes. Guilty on all counts. At sentencing, the judge observed Alexander with contempt. "Mr. Sterling, you systematically targeted susceptible elderly individuals, destroyed their autonomy, and stole their life savings. You preyed on trust, exploited family relationships, and demonstrated no remorse for the lives you destroyed. The court sentences you to 15 years in federal prison." 15 years. Alexander would be 48 when released, assuming anyone would employ an ex-convict with an elder fraud conviction. As they escorted him away, he looked at me with pure hatred. "This isn't concluded, elderly woman." I smiled tenderly. "Yes, it is."
After the trial, Linda and I celebrated at the identical restaurant where Alexander had initially tried to manipulate me. "You realize you've become somewhat legendary in elder law circles," she stated, raising her wine glass. "How so?" "You're the widow who counterattacked and triumphed. You've inspired other victims to come forward, other families to question suspicious relatives." "Excellent. No one should endure what Alexander planned for me." "What's next for you?" I considered Chloe reconstructing her existence with hard-earned wisdom. I considered the other victims Alexander had destroyed over the years. I considered David's trust and the power it provided me to protect individuals who couldn't protect themselves. Next, I ensure this never occurs to anyone else. How? By utilizing every resource at my disposal to hunt down predators before they locate their next victim. Linda smiled. "That sounds costly." "I can afford it." That night, I sat in my kitchen reading David's letter one ultimate time. He'd known this day would arrive. He'd prepared me for it. He'd given me the weapons to win a war I didn't even realize was being fought. But more than that, he'd given me authorization to be hazardous. Alexander Sterling had learned too belatedly that some widows counterattack, and some counterattacks are fatal.
The aftermath of Alexander's conviction brought unexpected visitors to my door. Chloe's mother-in-law, Beatrice, appeared Tuesday morning, saturated with desperation disguised as dignity. "Eleanor, we need to discuss this unfortunate situation." "Enter, Beatrice. I was wondering when you'd appear." She glided into my parlor as if she still possessed the world, but I could perceive the fractures in her facade. The jewelry remained present, but it appeared somehow cheaper. The designer garments were perfectly pressed, but slightly outdated. "This crusade against Alexander has proceeded too far." "Crusade? Is that what we're designating prosecuting criminals now?" "He committed an error. Individuals don't merit having their lives ruined over one misjudgment." "One misjudgment, Beatrice? Your son systematically targeted elderly women for years. This wasn't an error. It was his business model." She shifted uncomfortably, her mask of superiority slipping. "The family is suffering because of your actions." "The family is suffering because of Alexander's crimes. We're losing everything: the residence, the enterprise, our reputation." And there it was. Not concern for Alexander, not remorse for his victims, but anxiety about their own social standing. How tragic. I'm certain the elderly women Alexander robbed would be devastated to learn about your inconvenience. "You don't comprehend. We have obligations, commitments." "You had obligations to raise a son who didn't prey on susceptible individuals. How did that succeed?" Beatrice's composure fractured completely. "What do you desire from us?" "Nothing. I already obtained what I desired: justice." "There must be something. Money, public apology. Surely we can negotiate something." I examined her face, perceiving the desperation she was attempting to conceal so diligently. "Actually, there is something you can accomplish." Hope flickered in her eyes. "What?" "Vanish. Relocate. Alter your name. Ensure no member of your family ever targets another elderly individual." That's unreasonable." "Prison is unreasonable." Poverty is unreasonable. Losing your autonomy to a predator is unreasonable. My request is perfectly reasonable." Beatrice departed without another word, her dignity in fragments. Wednesday brought Alexander's former business partner, a disreputable man named Richard who had apparently been coordinating the elder fraud network. "Mrs. Vance, I believe we can assist each other." "I doubt that profoundly. I possess information about other victims, names, amounts stolen, methods employed, information that could help you recover losses." "In exchange for what?" "Leniency for Alexander, perhaps a reduced sentence, early parole." I laughed, genuinely laughed at his audacity. "Richard, allow me to clarify something. I don't negotiate with criminals. I annihilate them." "You're committing an error. We could be valuable allies." "You could be valuable inmates, which coincidentally is exactly what you're about to become." I contacted Linda immediately after he departed. By Friday, Richard was under federal investigation for his role in the fraud network. The subsequent week brought a procession of Alexander's associates, each attempting to bargain their way out of prosecution. Real estate agents who had assisted in laundering stolen money, lawyers who'd prepared fraudulent documents, bank employees who had assisted in moving assets. One by one, I directed all of them to Linda and the FBI. "You're making quite the reputation," Linda observed during one of our weekly meetings. "Word is spreading that targeting you was Alexander's fatal error." Excellent. Fear is an excellent deterrent. The federal prosecutor says your case is going to revolutionize how they handle elder fraud networks. How so? Typically, they apprehend one or two individuals and designate it a victory. Your case is providing them access to an entire criminal organization. And the other victims? 37 confirmed thus far, with more coming forward each week. Total damages exceeding $14 million. $14 million stolen from elderly individuals who trusted the wrong person. Can we recover their money? Most of it. The federal asset forfeiture statutes are quite favorable when criminal enterprises are involved. And what about Alexander specifically? His personal assets are being liquidated, the residence, vehicles, jewelry, everything. It'll be distributed among his victims, including you. I wasn't actually victimized financially since I never signed the papers. Then my portion proceeds to the other victims. Eleanor, that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. I can spare it.
That evening, Chloe visited for dinner, appearing healthier than she had in months. "The divorce is final," she announced. "How do you feel?" "Liberated." Terrified, but liberated. Terrified of what? Of committing the identical error again, of trusting the incorrect individual. "Chloe, what Alexander did to you wasn't your fault. But I introduced him into our family. I provided him access to you. And when you learned the truth, you selected justice over comfort. That requires courage. Did it ever occur to you that you might be in danger? That Alexander's associates might attempt retaliation?" I smiled, considering the security measures Linda had assisted me implement, the connections with law enforcement, the very public nature of my victory. Let them attempt. I'm not the helpless widow they believe I am. No, you're definitely not that. As Chloe departed that night, I reflected on how much had transformed since Alexander initially approached me with his fraudulent concern. 6 months ago, I'd been concealing my resources, performing the role of modest widow, maintaining a low profile. Now I was someone whose telephone calls received immediate responses, whose concerns were taken seriously, whose adversaries ended up in federal prison. But more significantly, I'd become someone who mattered to individuals who required protection. The telephone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Linda's voice was excited. "Eleanor, we just obtained a breakthrough in the federal case. Alexander is cooperating." "What's he informing them?" "Everything. Names, methods, locations, bank accounts. The entire elder fraud network is about to collapse. And in exchange? Reduced sentence. He'll still serve significant time, but not the full 15 years. I considered Alexander in his prison cell, finally comprehending that actions have consequences, that predators occasionally become prey. How much time? Probably 7 to 10 years with good behavior. 7 years. Alexander would be 42 when released with a federal conviction that would pursue him forever. That's acceptable. There's something else. The federal prosecutor desires to interview you about establishing a victim advocacy program. What variety of program? Training for law enforcement, resources for victims, legal support for prosecutions. They desire to utilize your case as a model. I smiled, considering David's legacy and how he'd equip me not merely to protect myself, but to protect others. Schedule the meeting.
As I disconnected, I realized that Alexander Sterling had inadvertently given me the greatest gift possible, a purpose that matched my resources. He tried to steal my autonomy and ended up providing me with a mission. Some mistakes are more costly than others. His had cost him everything and given me exactly what I required to become hazardous to individuals like him. Justice, I decided, possessed an excellent scent of irony. The federal prosecutor's office felt different from local law enforcement, more serious, more professional, more expensive. Agent Maria Rodriguez greeted me with the variety of respect usually reserved for major political contributors. "Mrs. Vance, your case has become our benchmark for elder fraud prosecution." "How so?" "Most victims are too embarrassed or confused to counterattack effectively. You not only counterattacked, you dismantled an entire criminal network. I possessed excellent resources, and you employed them strategically. That's what we desire to discuss." Agent Rodriguez distributed files across the conference table. Photographs, financial records, organizational charts displaying the scope of Alexander's operation. 38 victims across 7 states, average loss of $350,000 per victim, total damages approaching $16 million. $16 million stolen from elderly individuals who trusted the incorrect, charming young men. What occurred to the other victims? Most lost their autonomy, their savings, their confidence in their own judgment. Several were placed in care facilities against their will. 2 perished while their assets were being systematically stolen. 2 individuals died while being robbed? The number struck me like a physical blow. What can we accomplish for them? For the deceased, nothing. For the survivors, everything if you're willing to assist. What variety of assistance? Agent Rodriguez extracted a thick folder labeled Victim Advocacy Initiative. We desire to create a program that accomplishes for other victims what you accomplished for yourself. Legal resources, financial protection, criminal prosecution support. Funded how? Combination of federal grants, asset forfeiture funds, and private donations. Private donations. She was requesting me to bankroll justice for elder fraud victims. How much would this cost? Initial establishment approximately $2.5 million, ongoing operations possibly $6 million annually. $6 million annually. A significant portion of David's trust, but insufficient to impact my security. And in exchange, we systematically annihilate every elder fraud operation in the country. I considered the two victims who'd perished while being robbed, about the others who'd lost everything to predators like Alexander. Where do I sign? The paperwork required 4 hours. When we concluded, I was the primary funding source for the most comprehensive elder fraud prosecution program in federal history. Mrs. Vance, you realize you've just declared war on a multi-billion-dollar criminal industry. Excellent. Wars maintain existence. Interesting. That evening, Chloe and I celebrated the new program over dinner at the restaurant where Alexander had initially tried to manipulate me. Mom, are you certain about expending this much money on strangers? They're not strangers. They're individuals who got targeted by predators like your ex-husband. But $6 million annually is less than I earn in investment income. Your father constructed this wealth to protect individuals. I'm finally utilizing it the way he intended. And if the program doesn't function, then we'll construct a superior one. Money is only useful if you employ it for something that matters. Chloe raised her wine glass. To making predators pay. To making them extinct.
The program launched 3 months later with spectacular outcomes. Within the initial week, we'd initiated investigations in 14 states. Within the initial month, we'd apprehended 19 individuals connected to elder fraud networks. But the most satisfying call arrived on a Tuesday morning from Agent Rodriguez. Mrs. Vance, we just arrested Alexander's former mentor. His mentor, the man who instructed him how to target elderly women, has been operating these schemes for 20 years. Your program provided us the resources to build a case against him. What's his name? Robert Sterling, Alexander's uncle. The family enterprise was literally stealing from elderly individuals. How many victims? Over 90. Dating back to the 1990s, he's been systematically destroying lives for decades. And now he's confronting life in prison without parole. The federal accusations alone will confine him until he expires. Life in prison for stealing from elderly individuals. Finally, consequences that matched the crime. There's something else. He desires to negotiate a deal. What variety of deal? Full cooperation in exchange for a reduced sentence, names, methods, locations of other networks across the country. And you're considering this? We're considering it because his information could help us shut down elder fraud operations in 32 states. I considered justice versus revenge, about protecting future victims versus punishing past crimes. Accept the deal, but ensure he serves significant time, at least 12 years, even with cooperation. 12 years. Robert Sterling would be 78 when released, assuming he survived that long in prison. Acceptable. The information Robert provided was devastating to elder fraud networks nationwide. Within 6 months, our program had facilitated arrest in 26 states. The criminal organizations that had preyed on elderly victims for decades were collapsing like card structures. You've become the most feared individual in elder fraud circles, Linda informed me during one of our meetings. They're actually cautioning each other about targeting widows because they might end up with another Eleanor Van situation. What's an Eleanor Van situation? Complete destruction of their criminal enterprise, federal prosecution, and asset forfeiture that leaves them insolvent. Ideal. Fear is the optimal deterrent. There's discussion of naming the federal elder fraud statute after you. The Vance Act. The Don't Confront Widows Act was mentioned, but they believed that might be too informal. I laughed, considering David and how proud he'd be that his careful planning had led to protecting thousands of elderly individuals. Either designation functions for me.
That evening, I sat in my garden reading the latest program reports. In 1 year, we'd recovered over $45 million for fraud victims. We'd sent scores of predators to prison. We'd created a network of protection that extended across the entire nation. But more significantly, we'd sent a message that elderly individuals were no longer easy targets. The telephone rang, interrupting my reflection. Chloe's voice was excited. "Mom, activate the news, Channel 5. I located the remote and switched to the local news, where a reporter was standing outside the federal courthouse. In a stunning development, authorities have arrested the entire leadership of what they're designating the largest elder fraud network in U.S. history. The investigation, funded by a private donor who wishes to remain anonymous, has resulted in accusations against 47 individuals across 17 states. 47 arrests, 17 states. The network that had destroyed so many lives was finally being destroyed itself. Mom, are you observing? I'm observing. How does it feel? I considered Alexander in his prison cell, about Robert Sterling confronting life behind bars, about the hundreds of victims who would finally obtain justice. It feels like your father's money is being employed exactly the way he intended. And how's that? To transform helpless widows into exceptionally hazardous adversaries of individuals who prey on the susceptible. As I disconnected, I realized that Alexander Sterling had committed the most expensive error in elder fraud history. He targeted a widow who possessed the resources to counterattack and the determination to annihilate anyone who threatened her. But more than that, he'd awakened something in me that I didn't know existed. The absolute resolve to protect individuals who couldn't protect themselves. David had bequeathed me $35 million to remain secure. I'd utilized it to make the world safer for everyone. Some legacies are worth more than money. This one was worth everything.
This story is just the beginning. Make sure to subscribe to Shattered Voices and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters.